competed against this generation's best boxing heavyweight champion, flooring him once and going the distance with him.
Welcome back to Fighting Words. I'm Chris Maxwell, joined as always by our senior combat writer, Andreas Hale, and senior combat editor, Tom Gray. It was a scary weekend, and not just for those celebrating Halloween, but for Tyson Fury, who, despite being the overwhelming favorite to defeat Francis Ngannou in his boxing debut, the heavyweight champion left with a black eye, a cut on his face, and a split decision victory after a third-round knockdown by Ngannou actually put the undefeated record of the current heavyweight champion in jeopardy. And knockdown isn't even a right word for it. Ngannou had a stellar performance, and he left the ring unscathed. And it could have been the biggest upset in sports history had the judges not gone that way for Fury. Now, last week when we spoke about this fight on Fighting Words, I asked for your prediction, and both of you laughed at me and said that Tyson Fury was going to dominate this fight. And that clearly was not the case. So before we get into the analysis of it, I'm just curious to know your immediate reaction as you were watching this fight unravel in real time.
I was in shock. I mean, anyone in boxing, fans, media, anyone involved in the sport was shocked by that. Perhaps with the exception of Team Ngannou, who knew what they were doing. But there are no words. I've got nothing to compare it to. To me, it was a combination of a lot of things. But this is all in hindsight because, as you said, I picked Fury without even blinking. I would have put a year's wage on it. That there was absolutely no threat here. But to me in the fight, Fury was ill-conditioned. He wasn't in fighting shape whatsoever. He'd clearly thought the guy was going to roll over. Ngannou had much better ring craft and skills than I could ever have imagined. It's the best I've ever seen an MMA fighter transition over to boxing, even just down in terms of his shape. He just looked the part. He had a game plan in place. I don't want to bore anyone with it, but he was just constantly looking to counter Fury, and he wasn't biting on Fury's feints, which bedeviled Vladimir Klitschko, bedeviled Deontay Wilder. He had a game plan in place, which was to punch with Fury, and Fury had absolutely no imagination in his offense. And the left hook knockdown was beyond reproach, a clean knockdown. It was a cracker. I don't think Fury was major league hurt by it, but it was close all the way, and Tyson Fury got off with one there. The decision could have went against him. I'm not against Tyson getting the decision. I think enough people thought Tyson just about edged it, but I was blown away with the way that unfolded.
Man, that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing for the sport of boxing. That was embarrassing for Tyson Fury. That's embarrassing for all those who believe Tyson Fury would beat Francis Ngannou. But Francis Ngannou turned in a phenomenal performance, one that is written for Hollywood. His career is just built for Hollywood. Somebody who was digging in the sand mines in Cameroon and went to France and was homeless and became the UFC heavyweight champion, but always had his eye to be a boxer. Became a boxer and has pro debut against the WBC and lineal heavyweight champion of the world and nearly beat him. One thing I want to get out of the way, this wasn't a robbery. I keep seeing people say this was a robbery. A robbery would constitute that Francis Ngannou had dominated the fight and got the scorecards read against him. That's not what happened. This was a close fight that, to Tom's point, could have went either way, and Fury won. I had Fury winning by 2 rounds, but without the knockdown. But it is what it is, and Francis Ngannou had a terrific performance, and I think he outperformed everybody's expectations. He won't be sneaking up on anybody ever again, but Tyson Fury's stock has taken a magnificent hit, not just in the era of great heavyweights, but his all-time status as a great heavyweight took a significant hit, and it's his fault. He undertrained, he didn't perform, everything that he thought would work didn't. He embarrassed himself, and now we got to go back to the drawing board and see what's next for him. And but it was one of those performances where I was me covering MMA as well. I was proud of Francis Ngannou, but Tyson Fury, he should be ashamed of himself.
You mentioned the era of heavyweights. There was a lot of expectation for this era of heavyweights, and now Tyson Fury joins a very elite and not so proud squad of the heavyweights who have kind of squandered the golden era, if you will. And of course, that's Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, who were projected to do great things and then just flopped. And those flops come because they weren't taking the fight seriously. We saw that specifically with Anthony Joshua in his first fight with Andy Ruiz, where, hey, this is just, you know, a warm-up fight to get ready for Wilder. And we saw how that went down. And Tyson Fury, to be fair, I mean, none of us were really taking this fight seriously going into it. We knew it was a money grab, but he really proved that he wasn't taking it seriously. Tom, you mentioned how out of shape he was, but even from the ring walk, he came out dancing to Pretty Woman and was kind of making a mockery out of it, while Francis Ngannou came in dressed like a king, mocking the Gypsy King, surrounded by elite UFC fighters who I'm going to predict now we might see in a boxing ring and boxing gloves in the future as well, after setting the tone. But do we think that this was just a moment of Tyson Fury, you know, being out of shape, not taking it seriously, letting his guard down? Or is he shot? And is that maybe the reason why we haven't seen him make these big fights he needs to make to prove his status as a legend in the heavyweight division in boxing?
That's a good question. All we can do is look forward to what he does next. I mean, I am of the solid opinion that the fighter that you've seen there and against Ngannou would not be the one that turned up against Alexander Usyk, because Tyson would get turned upside down. I've always liked Tyson Fury to win that fight. To me, the one thing that neither Andreas or I have mentioned yet is, you've alluded to it slightly there, with all the walking in with UFC guys, and Tyson walked through a bunch of former world champions on his way to the ring, but it's also the kind of party atmosphere that was over in Saudi Arabia. You know, oh, there's one Ronaldo, there's another Ronaldo, there's Manny Pacquiao, there's Sugar Ray Leonard, and Tyson was caught right in the middle of that. There was no, I get the fact it was a spectacular event, but I think that whole event has been a distraction, and as much as Ngannou was part of that event, he was second fiddle. He was the opponent. Fury was over there almost like a court jester, like a party organizer, and it's all just backfired on him. It's like a publicity stunt that backfired on him. In answer to the question, is he shot? I don't know. I mean, the performance was that bad. I could tell by looking at him and the things that he was doing. I've been watching Tyson Fury since he turned pro in December 2008. I've never seen him perform like that in my life. I mean, there's basic novice stuff going on. 1-2, pull back 1-2, and the way he kept getting caught with the left hook and no imagination to his offense. It was bizarre to watch. Is that down to him being ill-conditioned, or is that down to being shot? I tend to go with the former just based on the circumstances. I think there's still good nights ahead for him, but as Andreas said, his reputation's taking a terrific knock.
Yeah, the issue with Tyson Fury is that, like, he thought that he could get Francis Ngannou out of there immediately, was surprised at how well the Ngannou was composed in the boxing ring. Ngannou didn't fall for any of the tricks. It doesn't necessarily mean that Tyson Fury is washed or washed up, or I've seen people say that the heavyweight division is terrible. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means that Tyson Fury wasn't prepared and Ngannou was better than we expected. Tyson Fury couldn't do what Floyd Mayweather did to Conor McGregor, which was Floyd stayed within himself. He may have taken Conor McGregor lightly, but he knew what he needed to do to get him out of there, like empty the gas tank, take advantage of him, and then knock him out. Fury went in there with a plan that he was just going to get Ngannou out of there in a round, and found out real quick that Ngannou was here to stay. The most impressive thing was Ngannou's chin. He took some shots. He even took a short elbow and didn't budge. Fury wasn't ready for that version of Francis Ngannou, and he found out the hard way that not being prepared and thinking you can walk over somebody and underestimating your opponent can make you pay dearly. You almost lost, but now everybody's questioning your greatness. Is he shot? Maybe. The one thing that we haven't really thought about is those 3 wars with Deontay Wilder. The second one, not so much. But he took a lot of punishment in those fights, and Tyson Fury's not a spring chicken. The Jared Chisora fights and the Dillian White fights weren't difficult fights. Francis Ngannou wasn't necessarily difficult, but Father Time is undefeated. And if you're not conditioned, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to start slowing down, and it happens overnight. I don't think he's shot. I don't think that person that we saw against Ngannou would show up against Alexander Usyk, but I think he's damaged his credibility to the point where he's going to have to prove to us beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's one of the best in the world against Usyk, or else we're going to question every accomplishment that he had. Fair or unfair, that's the way it goes. We perform like that against a fighter who had never had a pro boxing match. It is what it is.
So we've established that Fury embarrassed himself and he should have done better. But let's save some praise for Francis Ngannou. This was his boxing debut against the current world heavyweight champion. And he outshined and outperformed any expectations people had of him. And of course, we don't undervalue what he's done in the UFC. And we knew he had a powerful punch. But like you said, he had a really strong chin too. And this was not a title fight, even though a lot of people were surprised by that, given Tyson's refusal to defend his titles. But given the performance that we just saw, and given the status of the heavyweight division, which I don't believe is terrible because now we do have Francis Ngannou in that division, do you think that based on this fight that he should be rated by the WBC?
This is not black and white. No. And I'm going to put forward a devil's advocate reason for this. If Tyson Fury was as hopelessly conditioned as I believe that he was, and that's the reason for the performance, which I think was the case, even though Ngannou, I want to re-emphasise, did things in the ring that I didn't dream that he could do, and his patience is something else we should reference. He fought a magnificent fight. My concern would be that you now put Ngannou, Andreas made a brilliant point, Ngannou's sneaking up on no one now. So whoever he gets next time out is going to go through the same kind of training camp they would go through if they were facing the best in the world. There'll be no more underestimating Francis Ngannou in a boxing ring. So let's play devil's advocate and say that he signs on for a top fighter at heavyweight and gets absolutely and utterly cleaned out. That would be my concern. I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense to say definitively after that, with everything that came with it, that Francis Ngannou is one of the best heavyweights in the world. I don't think it makes sense. I'm not for putting a pair of Larry Holmes trunks in the post for Francis Ngannou. I think he performed well in the night against a man that just wasn't prepared to face him.
Tell them to disagree with you. The WBC should rank them because they make belts for all these stupid events and they do whatever they want to do. So I am totally for them ranking Francis Ngannou.
There was actually a belt. There was a belt on the line, right? There was a belt on the line. Well, they'll do it again. That doesn't mean to say it needs to be right. They can give him a belt, but I don't think they should put him in a position to fight the best in the world off of that, just in case something stupid happens.
Look, he overperformed, he outperformed expectations. Go ahead and rank him. Go ahead and rank him. Francis Ngannou believes that he can beat Tyson Fury in a rematch. Maybe he needs to find out the hard way. Maybe not. Maybe he'll surprise us again. The other thing I want to point out is the one thing that everybody said, myself, Tom, anybody watching this show, Carissy probably thought the same thing. Francis Ngannou had a puncher's chance, and one punch could change the whole fight. He didn't need it. He had a knockdown, which was great, but he boxed, and nobody saw that coming. So it wasn't like he threw one haymaker, landed it, and that was the end of the fight. He boxed for 10 rounds, 10 3-minute rounds. This is a UFC heavyweight that rarely ever goes the distance. And a UFC heavyweight title fight is 25 minutes. He fought for 30 minutes. He looked better conditioned than Tyson Fury was, and he boxed brilliantly against a heavyweight who we thought was one of the best ever. You can rank him. I'm fine with that. The WBC does what they want anyway. It's like, who am I to tell them what to do? They're going to do whatever they want to do. Go ahead and rank him because for Francis, to his credit, there's a big money fight waiting for Francis Ngannou. Anthony Joshua, I'd love to see it. Deontay Wilder, sure, why not? Because now it ain't just the boxer's reputation's on the line. Boxing's reputation is on the line. It's Francis Ngannou against the world. That's kind of how he's had it. So if they want to rank him, I'm all for it because I'd love to see one of these fights because I like to see Francis Ngannou get another payday. I'm not against anything that's happening here. It's all ridiculous at the end of the day because this fight should have never happened. But now that we're here, go ahead, WBC, rank them.
I need to say that Maurizio Sulaiman, there's a good reason for ranking him because they'll get an actual official title on the line somehow, even if it's a diamond belt or some belt they make up, and the WBC will collect sanctioning fees for that. So I know ultimately why Francis Ngannou is going to get ranked.
Another question I asked you last week, which you thought was a little ridiculous and laughed at me for, was, if this fight with Usyk doesn't happen, what could happen next? And you, Andreas, you said it would be a rematch with Francis Ngannou, which we didn't think would be necessary. Now, that fight doesn't seem as ridiculous now. However, let's still hope that Tyson Fury will face Alexander Usyk. Now, that fight was originally slated for December 23rd. I think we all know that for sure is not going to happen. But with that fight now pending, figuring out when it's going to happen, I think the conversation has shifted a little in that, is Fury going into that the favorite? or does Usyk look like the better contender? And one of my favorite moments from Saturday night is when the knockdown happened. Someone got a incredible picture of Alexander Usyk sitting ringside with this look of pure shock on his face and not terror. You could see some excitement in there. But do you think he's going into this potential heavyweight title fight with Tyson Fury with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more odds in his favor against Tyson Fury?
Confidence, I don't think we need to question. I think Alexander Usyk has had his eye on taking down Tyson Fury for so long. He's convinced 100% inside that he can do it. I think Tyson now will open as the underdog off of that. I really do. I don't think that would have been the case 4 days ago, 3 days ago, or whatever it is. But now, because he was woeful there, I think the odds makers are going to look at it. When was the last time Usyk turned in what you would call a subpar performance? We can talk about the controversy around, and I thought it was controversial with Daniel Dubois, but he's been boxing at a super high level for a very long time. I think probably Shaz Witherspoon, maybe Derek Chisora, which is years ago, or maybe the performances where he was less than stellar. Against Joshua, he was out of this world. So the odds makers look at that and say, right, that's who Fury's getting in against. Fury just looked garbage against a pro debutant. Yeah, I think Usyk will open as favourite.
Yeah, Alexander Usyk should 100% be the favorite. It's a what have you done for me lately business. And no matter what happens, if you had a bad performance, like if we remember when Floyd Mayweather fought Marcos Maidana and everybody was surprised by that performance, and some people went as far as to say Marcos Maidana won, there were some people that thought that Marcos Maidana should be the favorite in the rematch. And then Floyd Mayweather went and dominated that fight. But it matters what we just saw out of Tyson Fury. And we know that Alexander Usyk is a phenomenal fighter. And I think the worst performance that we saw was against Chaz Witherspoon. It wasn't great, but he still won that fight pretty handily. At least Chaz Witherspoon is a pro boxer. Ngannou's not. So Tyson Fury should go into the fight with Usyk with so many questions. He shouldn't be offended by this, but now you're the underdog. You're fighting the unified heavyweight champion who hasn't lost the fight, who's been pretty dominant since he showed up, and you just turned in a piss-poor performance. So yeah, now you're the underdog.
I want to say one thing. What crossed my mind earlier, see now, because he's been written off, history will show you that if you write off Tyson Fury, that's when you're supposed to get the best out of him. It was the case against Klitschko where he was largely written off. He came back against Wilder and people were basically already writing his sporting obituary, and he beat Wilder essentially in the first fight and then leathered him. Sorry, that's so Scottish. He beat him easily twice in the rematches. So if past is prolonged, Tyson should come after Usyk now at 100%. So we'll see, but he's got a lot to prove.
Yeah, I hope that Tyson Fury takes this as an incentive to perform, because he shouldn't be, he should be offended, right? Because you're the heavyweight champion of the world, you're literally a heavyweight champion, and you had a bad night. But we don't care. That's the thing that Tyson doesn't understand. We don't care. We care what we just saw. So prove us wrong, because now you have, your legacy is on the line. This isn't just about the undisputed heavyweight titles anymore. This was a conversation that we had after the Wilder trilogy of where does Tyson Fury rank amongst the greatest heavyweights ever? Larry Holmes, Muhammad Ali, Jack Johnson. Now people are saying this entire generation of heavyweights is trash after one night. It may be unfair, but it's all on Tyson Fury's shoulders to prove all of that wrong. Now his back is up against the wall again. He came back before, like you said, going into the Wilder fight. He basically had rolled off the couch, had to get himself back into fighting shape after losing 400 pounds. Nobody believed in him. He's in a similar spot now where nobody believes in him. He's got to prove everybody wrong. So he's going to be the underdog, but it's up to him to turn the tide in his favor.
So now we play our favorite game, which is wait and see what Tyson Fury tweets, what he posts, and what rumors come out of this fight, that it will eventually happen with Alexander Usyk. We just do not know when. And I really think we need to add a counter to the show, like how many times we bring up when we don't know when this fight is going to happen, or just keep track of the rumors, because it's getting exhausting. And with that being said, we'll be back to talk about this inevitably on Fighting Words. But until then, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, all below. I'm Chris Maxwell for Andreas Hale and Tom Gray. We will see you back here next week on Fighting Words.